You know, in the world of sports, we always hear that records are made to be broken. But what if some aren't? What if there's a legend out there whose numbers are so out of this world, they might just last forever? All right, let's get into the story of one of basketball's most unique and most durable superstars ever. So let's just start with this number 15,806. Now, if you follow the NBA, you know this number is, well, it's legendary. It's the all time record for assists. To give you some perspective on that, it's almost 4,000 more than the guy in second place. That's just a completely insane gap. And then you've got this one, 3,265. That's right there is the NBA's all-time record for steals. And again, he's not just in first place, he's in first place by a mile. He holds two of the most critical records for a point guard, and in both cases, nobody else is even close. So I really want this to sink in. These records are in a totally different category. I mean, it's one thing to hold a record. It's another thing entirely to hold it by a margin that seems almost mathematically impossible to ever beat. Seriously, they're considered untouchable. But you know, numbers like that don't just happen in a vacuum. Nope, they were born out of one of the most consistent and one of the most legendary partnerships in the history of sports. If you were watching basketball back in the 90s, you heard this phrase over and over and over, Stockton to Malone. It wasn't just a play call, you guys, it was like the soundtrack to the Utah Jazz. These two had a connection that felt almost telepathic, and it defined an entire era of basketball. And the bedrock of all that success was loyalty. I mean, Stockton spent his entire 19-year career with just one team, the Utah Jazz. Think about that. That almost never happens today. And that dedication paid off with 11 All-Star selections. But here's the twist that really defines the guy. For all that dominance, he never once won a regular season MVP award. He was a superstar who somehow managed to fly just under the radar. And that brings us to the central paradox of John Stockton. This is the story of the guy whose quiet, unassuming look made one of the toughest, fiercest competitors the game has ever seen. This slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you've got the image, the quiet guy in the famous short shorts who hated doing interviews. But the reality? The guy every opponent knew, he was brutally tough, unbelievably resilient, and an absolute Iron Man who just did not miss games. This quote, it's basically his entire philosophy summed up in 6 words. In an age where personality and branding were becoming huge, Stockton was completely old school. No flash, no drama, just pure, relentless, brilliant basketball. And you want to talk about durable? Check out this number, 4. With just one single exception over his entire 19-year career, this was the absolute most games Stockton ever missed in a season. Most guys would kill for just one season that healthy, let alone almost 2 decades of it. So this reputation for being so low-key, so under the radar, it led to one of the all-time great stories in sports history. It perfectly captures his whole invisible superstar thing. Okay, so picture this. It's the 1992 Olympics. Stockton is the starting point guard for the legendary Dream Team, maybe the most famous team ever. He shows up to the arena in Barcelona with no credentials, and the security guards have absolutely no clue who he is. They almost don't let him in, but the best part, after he finally gets inside, he literally walks right past a giant poster of his own face, and nobody even gives him a second look. And here's the kicker. This wasn't some guy at the end of the bench. This was the man running the show for Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, and Larry Bird. The so-called Invisible Man was actually the one who was completely indispensable. So how in the world do you honor a legacy that's so dominant on its own, but also so defined by a partnership? Well, as we're about to see, in John Stockton's case, you just do it twice. This is an incredibly rare honor, by the way. First, he gets into the Hall of Fame for his amazing individual career, but then he got inducted a second time as a key member of that 1992 Dream Team. It's really the perfect tribute, right? It recognizes his singular greatness and his role on a team that changed the game of basketball forever. And that really leaves us with this final thought. In today's world of 24/7 media, where your personal brand can feel just as important as your performance, could a superstar who just wanted to let his play do the talking still make it to the top? It's a really interesting question, And it's what makes John Stockton's legacy not just unbreakable, but truly one of a kind.